My introduction to anime came to me as it did with a lot of others, through the English dubbed version of Dragon Ball Z that would be played on different cartoon channels. At the time, I didn't know it was called anime. I just really enjoyed watching a show in which characters actually died, and I know that sounds weird, but most of what I was watching on TV at the time was enjoyable and fun, but fairly low stakes, even for a child. So, Dragon Ball Z stood out. I also saw a few Ghibli films over the years in English. Fast forward many years later, and I'm scrolling through Netflix looking for something to watch. Attack on Titan came up on my feed, and having heard about it already due to its massive popularity, I gave it a try. Now, I'll be honest, I was a little iffy on watching it in Japanese with subtitles. I didn't like having to read while watching, but the show was so good that I kept watching and it eventually became normal, which then acted as a fluid gateway to other shows I found on Netflix like Naruto and Devilman Crybaby. Netflix today has a plethora of anime titles to watch compared to when I first started, so the potential for newcomers is high right now with vast availability. So, I thought I would make a video showcasing 10 titles that are easy to start with for those who have been intrigued by anime on Netflix or Hulu but don't necessarily know where to start. This video is similar to the 5 shonen titles I put together for newcomers, but will differ in the fact that the titles in this video are not mutually exclusive to the shonen category. Anime is a wonderful thing that I love dearly, but when we get down to it, it's ultimately a medium through which to tell stories, just as animation is here in the West. So, whether you just want to stay comfortable at ground level or really dive into the depths, we are Dino Junkie, presenting 10 titles to get you started. What better way to dip your toes in the water than with a little Ghibli? Director Hayao Miyazaki has made classic after classic through the products of his creative mind wrapped in important imagery and symbolism, but here he really puts out his best. We follow a young girl named Chihiro who is moving with her parents to a new home and a new part of the country. Chihiro doesn't seem thrilled about the prospect, but is quickly distracted as the family makes a detour into a tunnel which leads to an abandoned village of sorts. Her parents stumble across some delicious food lying out and begin to eat. Chihiro goes to explore where she runs into Haku, a boy who warns her to return across the riverbed before sunset. Finding her parents transformed into pigs as punishment for eating the meals prepared for traveling spirits, and also finding herself unable to return back to the other side of the river, Chihiro begins work in the spirit world at an exclusive bathhouse for traveling spirits after being advised to do so by Haku. We follow Chihiro as Miyazaki paints a colorful and lively undead world to showcase the burdens that children take from their parents, as Chihiro navigates through her parents' and many others' greed, counteracting it only through her own kind and selfless actions to help others before herself. This movie has all of the nostalgic feel of the old Ghibli films while still maintaining an animation quality that holds up today in a superb manner. Joe Hisaishi delivers another stellar soundtrack, matching the quality of his cinematographic partner within his own musical department, and the two come together to make one of the most beautiful and uplifting films that I have seen with Spirited Away. Let's shift into the shonenscape with one of my favorite ongoing hero stories, One Punch Man. If you haven't seen or heard of One Punch Man already, then allow me to give a brief rundown of the show. A part satire, part serious depiction of a superhero story following Saitama, a hero who can defeat any villain or monster in one punch, but who quickly begins to seek a greater challenge as his swift victories grow to become quite boring. One Punch Man is written by One, the same author of Mob Psycho 100, and while I do think Mob Psycho 100 is better than One Punch Man's superhero setting and pace is a little easier to get into. Saitama's laid-back behavior spawns comedic moments to arise, while all of the heroes and villains around him fight in battles to the death, and the steady blend of tense, serious action and comedic relief proves to be a simple concoction to consume. The first season of One Punch Man was animated by Madhouse, a studio known for how good its animation is, allowing for the well-crafted story to be partnered with some high-level artwork. Some of the fights in Season 1 still stick out in my mind today, especially the Saitama vs. Boros fight at the climax of the first season. A fair warning, however, that if you do watch Season 1 of One Punch Man and enjoy it, and plan to watch Season 2, that the animation studio is different. Many say that the animation isn't that bad, and in terms of overall quality across the board, no, it's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's leagues below Season 1. So if that's a big deal for you, but you still wish to continue the series, then I will link below where you can read it, because the artwork done by Yusuke Murata for the manga is some of the best work that I've seen in manga, so I think you'll be pleased with that more. Otherwise, if you don't care about the animation, or just prefer the anime to having to read, then continue on with Season 2. Overall, if the premise of this show sounds interesting to you, I would say to watch the first 3 episodes, and if you're not vibing with it, then just drop it. While Attack on Titan is technically considered to fall under the shonen category, in my eyes the only thing keeping it from being seinen is the lack of more foul language and sexual content. In terms of violence, it can get pretty gruesome, so if you can't stomach people being eaten alive, or killed by others, then this show is probably not for you. If that's not a problem, then you have one of the most creative depictions of one group being repressed by another ever told. Attack on Titan centers around Eren Yeager, a young man living in a world inhabited by humans like us, and much larger humanoid creatures known as Titans, that feast on humans. Eren wishes to join the Scout Regiment, a part of the military that goes out and surveys Titan activity and eliminates outside threats to the country. This happens after 2 Titans arrived out of nowhere near his hometown, and wreaked havoc, causing tragedy to befall the young protagonist. As Eren's journey carries on, we see him make friends and allies, go through rigorous training, and come face to face with huge monstrosities as the story twists and turns continuously, leaving you on the edge of your seat for more. Attack on Titan does a great job of fleshing out its side characters and developing the world our battle-hardened soldiers inhabit. Exposition is not rammed down the audience's throat, but instead implemented so naturally that the story is able to unfold itself. The vision the author had for his story is fully realized in this anime adaptation, and with each new season the story grows in quality. Studio Mappa created the adaptation for its manga counterpart, and I think they did a really good job. Some CGI here and there isn't the best, but the fight scenes are all done extremely well. The 4th season is coming out later this year, so with COVID going on right now, you should have plenty of time to catch up. I recommend watching the first 2 episodes, and if the story doesn't grab you, then feel free to move on, but I do highly recommend this show. Not only is it extremely enjoyable to watch, but it has a much more complex underlying plot that has an incredible amount of payoff. Gurren Lagann is one of those special anime that comes along every now and then. I feel like it's been talked about a good deal, and it seems to me that most people either love or hate the show, typically leaning towards the loving category. Gurren Lagann tells a beautiful story about taking life in your own hands and forming it into what you want it to be. It just happens to also do that while simultaneously being an incredibly well done Gundam anime. And if you're not aware, Gundam is a subgenre of anime which involves mechs fighting each other. We follow Shimon as he rises up and out of the oppressed underground society he lived in and to the surface through the use of a drill he finds while doing his job of digging. He and Kamina, a much older boy, begin to form their own ragtag group of survivors and warriors as they travel across the surface and battle against the denizens of the Spiral King, a man who attempts to keep their species underground. Filled with the act of persevering through seemingly impossible odds, finding love, confidence, and self-worth, and also the lack thereof, Gurren Lagann is a real tearjerker that hits home in quite a few areas. If you're interested, I would recommend watching the first 8 episodes. It has a slow start, but really takes off after a while, and it's just so inspiring and heartwarming to watch. So, again, I highly recommend pushing through just like Shimon. If you haven't heard about Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood already, I'm sure someone you know has. It's one of the best anime I've seen to date, and while in the shonen area, focuses much more on storytelling than the escalation of power with each new arc. Brotherhood tells the story of Edward and Alphonse Elric, two brothers who, after attempting to bring back their mother from the dead, lost parts of their body, with Ed losing a leg and Alphonse losing his life. This forces Ed to sacrifice his arm to bring his brother's soul back into a large set of armor that Alphonse can then control. They then set off on a journey in order to heal the inflicted damage and restore Alphonse's physical body. Brotherhood has incredibly well-written characters and plot points, as the two brothers become entangled in a mess of political espionage and a fight against supernatural forces. Alchemy as a magical system is so well made and is implemented into the story flawlessly. When things occur due to someone using alchemy, it makes sense rather than the fact that it's just magic. Brotherhood has some of the best fights in anime, part of that being due to the quality of the animation, and part of that being due to the fact that the fights have so much behind them. When characters fight, it's important. So, here we have a masterfully crafted story paired with an ominous but also heartbreaking soundtrack. Overall, it creates one for the books. The first season is the worst season, and this is mainly due to the fact that the original Full Metal Alchemist veered off of the manga and had its own ending, and so Brotherhood rushed what was canonical from the original all into the first season, which subtracts some value. If you're super interested, push through the first season, and trust me, it only gets better as it goes on. Coming in at 64 episodes, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood provides an epic saga for the audience to follow the Elric brothers on without overstaying its welcome. These next 5 titles are for those who have already dipped their toes in the water a little bit and are looking for something that takes a little more commitment. The first 5 were easy to just jump right in and watch and keep watching. Some of these 5 might be a little more intimidating or more complex, but they're just as good as the previous titles on the list. This is my baby right here. I love Cowboy Bebop so much. It's tied for my favorite anime of all time with Mob Psycho 100. The two are very different and have so much value for so many different reasons that I just can't put one over the other. Bebop is a masterpiece, plain and simple. I think many people can agree to that testament. I mean, the countless number of videos and discussions on the show are there because people love the show and want to talk about it with others. The same reason why I do what I do. Cowboy Bebop is a great gateway for a number of things. First, it allows you to get into Shinichiro Watanabe's work, as it is his directorial debut. It also serves as an introduction to episodic anime, rather than standard titles that follow story arcs, and it opens the door to more artistic types of anime. It's one of the most unique shows to have ever been released, which is standard for Watanabe. The main premise of the show consists around the crew of the spaceship, Bebop, and the adventures, or misadventures, that they go on. It's much more than that, but that allows for the standard episodic formula. Spike and Jet, the first 2 members of the Bebop, are bounty hunters called cowboys who search the different colonized planets in search of criminals. As the show goes on, more people become a part of the Bebop's crew, and we get backstory for each of our main cast sprinkled in over the 26-episode run, with Spike, the messy-haired, suit-wearing, cigarette-smoking badass protagonist, having his troubled background be the overarching story for the entire series. Each episode has its own style formed, as Watanabe pulls from all types of genres and musical themes to establish a new atmosphere. Spike's story arc has its own tone, along with Jet's, Faye's, and Ed's, and all other episodes not centering around one character have their own as well. Sometimes this is made possible by some off-the-wall jazz, sometimes it's from little to no music at all. No matter what, Cowboy Bebop knows how to use music in order to elevate its scenes. The show was made in 1998. But the animation holds up extremely well 22 years later. Watch the first 5 episodes of this one and see how you feel. If 5 does the trick, like I think it will, then you should be hooked. If not, then just let this puppy go. Yeah, this show made me cry like a little bitch. I don't know what it was, but I just couldn't stop watching. I finished the series in 3 days. It was just such a beautiful, well-paced story about a group of incredibly normal but also unique friends with deep-rooted issues plaguing each of them. It was just really refreshing to have something so human that was just as entertaining as young strong boy beats up other young strong boys. Your Lie in April follows piano prodigy Kosei Arima, who views the world in a dark, gray manner and can no longer hear the sound of the piano after his mother's death. That is until Kaori Miyazono jumps into his life, bringing all kinds of color back into it through her chaotic personality and prowess with the violin. As Arima gets back into the world of music, more and more is learned about his relationship with the world of music and his mother, and why he struggles so much. His relationships with his 3 friends wax and wane, as the 4 find themselves in a complex love quadrangle. This is all done with each new episode showcasing someone's musical talent, most of all Arima's, which allows for some really beautiful scenes as backstories are combined with classical music, hitting in the feels like a truck. I don't want to get too much into it because it would spoil a lot. I just really love this show and highly recommend it to anyone looking for a change of pace in their anime watching. Watch the first 2 to 3 episodes, and if you feel the excitement as to how these characters' lives are going to change, then stick with it. Otherwise, you can drop it. I want to throw a couple more movies in here. Anime movies are great because they allow you to broaden your horizons without having to sit down for 20 plus episodes. And when I think about what anime movie is both easy to sit down and watch, but also has had the largest impact on me, I come to A Silent Voice. A Silent Voice is a tale about depression and bullying, and how we can change our own and others' lives for better or for worse. It's a redemption story, and one that's extremely relatable. Shoyo Ishida is a Japanese teenage loner who we see dealing with some final obligations before he ultimately goes to kill himself, only to think back on his experience in middle school and all the things that led him here, including his harassment and bullying of a deaf girl around his age, Shoko Nishimiya. Shoyo decides against killing himself and instead continues on with his life. Only now, he goes to meet Nishimiya, and the two begin a friendship as he reveals that he knows sign language. This story centers around becoming a better person, and how incredible someone can be for all they can forgive. A Silent Voice has a roller coaster of emotions that will hit you while watching it. Seeing someone suffer and think they deserve to suffer is hard to watch, but it's so rewarding when they start to see that they too deserve love. Also, the soundtrack by Kensuke Ushio is one of the best soundtracks I've heard to date. The songs are so simple for the most part, but they play off of each new moment Ishida experiences so gracefully. I will say some of the characters in this movie are insufferable, but Ishida's character arc is so good that it's easily worth it to push through. This is another Ghibli film by Miyazaki, on par with Spirited Away for his best work. However, I do feel as though Princess Mononoke is much more personal to him as it tackles a lot more thematically. Miyazaki pushes an outlook to how we treat the planet in this 134-minute epic. The story begins with Emishi Prince Ashitaka slaying a demon that was actually a boar god corrupted by an iron ball inside of him. Ashitaka's arm becomes cursed, which then gives him supernatural strength but will ultimately end up killing him. He then sets out from his village to find a cure, and our journey begins as Ashitaka becomes swept up in a conflict between humans' greed of natural resources and the wrath of the gods that they incur. This film is so beautiful to watch, and luckily I was able to see it in theaters recently when it was circling back around. And I gotta say, it's Ghibli at its finest. Miyazaki really makes you think about your own impact on the earth and the nature that surrounds you. Now, this film does have a much slower pace to Spirited Away, in my opinion, but it's enjoyable all the way through. Give this one a try, as where Spirited Away showed its charm, this one shows its beauty. While JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is by no means my favorite anime, I still wish there were more like it. It's so incredibly unique in its storytelling, its structure, its character design, its comedy, and its power system that it's always fun to watch what Araki will throw into the mix next. To explain the premise of JoJo's correctly, I feel as though I must explain how the story is structured. JoJo's does not follow the standard story arc to story arc with the same characters. Instead, it is broken up into parts, currently at 8 parts with the 8th still running in the manga. While in the anime, the most recent part to have been animated is part 5. Each part has its own set of characters, its own JoJo, and its own story. In the first part, we have Jonathan Joestar battling evil vampires. The second part has Joseph Joestar fighting against ancient evil vampires. Part 3 has Jotaro Kujo and Joseph Joestar fighting a previous threat with newfound stand abilities. Part 4 focuses on Josuke Higashikata rooting out an evil presence in his small town, and so on and so forth. This show is strange, hence the title, but I feel as though I should still give out a warning if you aren't familiar with it already. It's a little tough to get into, and the first 2 parts are the weakest in my opinion, but they are also the shortest, so it only gets better from there. There are many battles in this show, but some of them are incredibly iconic and tense and so fun to watch. JoJo's really is a blast, and if you don't have time to sit through the first 2 parts, you can skip them, but there will be some things that don't make sense, specifically why Dio is such a threat throughout the series. The animation studio did a really good job of adapting the series' art style, mastering it around part 4 where it really stands out in full Araki fashion. This one takes some commitment, as the later parts are very long, so I highly recommend this show if you have a lot of time on your hands. Last but not least is Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter is one of my favorite anime/manga of all time. Yoshihiro Togashi, the creator of Yu Yu Hakusho, builds a fantasy world that rivals shows like One Piece, Naruto, and Dragon Ball. Personally, I just think Hunter x Hunter has a little more sophistication. It tells the story of Gon, a 12-year-old boy who leaves his island home in order to become a hunter like his father, Jing. Becoming a hunter is extremely difficult, and we follow Gon on his grueling quest as he makes friends, allies, and enemies while learning the true nature of the world around him. Gon is very optimistic and energetic, which can be dangerous in the cynical world outside of his sheltered island home. This is counteracted by Killua, Leorio, and Kurapika, his initial group of friends, who all bring their own lovable personalities to the table. As the show goes on and Gon learns more of what it takes to be a great hunter, the stakes continue to rise, and the world continues to grow. Togashi does a great job of world building, but his most detailed success lies within the explanation of his power system, Nen. Nen is one of the most well thought out systems I've seen. Every fight in the show is based around Nen, and the level of dedication that goes into making sure that the rules for Nen are held up in said fights is just incredible. Also, this was done by Madhouse, the same animation studio for One Punch Man Season 1, so yeah, it's damn good. This one will take a little more dedication as it runs at 148 episodes, and some of the arcs go on for a really long time, like the Chimera Ant arc. But if you stick it out, you'll be in for one of the most badass, well-crafted battle shonens ever made. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, that's super cool. Feel free to drop a like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good-ass rest of your day. My name is Max, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
In a tight guitar sound to check. Hide the police to chew deadly tight. Okay, no say, sa, what, solid minutes, lick,